Hello and welcome to Rise of Humanity. I am your host, Chris Karameyer, and for today's episode, I'm very glad to be joined by my guest, Ashley Watson. Ashley is a psychotherapist turned spiritual life coach who is on a mission to support and empower women to release their fears and limitations and create a life full of joy, love, and abundance. Ashley is also a Kundalini yoga and meditation teacher and incorporates this into her work to help her clients to create amazing lives for themselves. So Ashley, it's great to have you on the show today. Thank you so much for coming on.
Oh, thank you so much, Chris. I'm so happy and excited to be here.
Awesome. So you have, going from psychotherapist to spiritual life coach, you obviously got a very interesting journey. And reading from your website, it sounds like you've had a lot of challenges along the way. I mean, you write on your website that you had depression and eating disorder age 13. I mean, if we just start at the beginning of your journey and kind of what that looked like and how it unfolded.
Yeah, absolutely. I love sharing this story because I think it's sometimes in our darkest moments, we have these really beautiful opportunities that we can't see to really start going towards the light in ways that we don't even know yet. And when I was 13 years old, I was totally a girl of like the mean girls phenomena. I was like bullied a lot and didn't have a lot of friends and in middle school and And around that time, at some point in time, like in eighth grade and towards the summer before high school, I started losing a lot of weight. There was a lot of other stuff going on in my family. I had like my grandparents dying. I had my dog, who was like my big brother. I was the only child. He was dying. There was a lot of sort of craziness going on. And in amongst all this, I also got very, very sick. And I lost a ton of weight. And when that happened, at that time, I started also getting a lot of like positive reinforcement from my peers at that time, which like, in your 13-year-old brain, you don't really, like, you're like, oh, like, wow, like this is cool, And so around that time was when sort of the eating disorder sort of started happening. It wasn't a conscious decision. It just sort of started unfolding as I liked being acknowledged by my peers at that time. And then I got my first boyfriend and like all of these other things were going on. But I was at the time, I was pretty sick and I was not doing the things that I needed to do to be taking care of myself. And so what ended up happening is over that summer, things started becoming clearer and clearer that I was getting sicker. And I was in this moment with my grandfather at the time, who was sort of asking me, hey, Ash, like, you're going into high school. Like, what is it that you want to be doing with your life? Like, what do you want to be when you grow up? And at the time I was like, what do I didn't say this to him because I was also sort of like this very good girl. I didn't like confrontation. I didn't like asking for things. And I said to him, at the time I was thinking in my head, like, how am I supposed to know? I'm like this depressed mess who is constantly looking for validation from my peers. I'm, like not taking care of my body. I am not eating. I'm like, just doing everything I can to basically survive, but also like try to be accepted in the world that I thought that I wanted to be accepted in. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden I started, I was like looking down at myself and like all the, these thoughts were coming to me in these sort of split second moments. It feels like a long time as I explain it, but it's like, what do you mean? What do I want to be when I grow up? Like, I can't get myself out of like a paper bag right now. And without like, almost like without even anything coming out of my like, there was no thought almost, and like the words just came out of my mouth, and I said, I want to save little girls from themselves, because I knew that in that moment, I knew that there were likely other girls, being 13, other girls that felt just like me. And I felt like I had nowhere that I could go, that I could talk to, that I could explain what I was feeling. I didn't feel like I had any friends that I could talk to about how I was feeling, because I had been so sort of ostracized and bullied before that. And I like wanted to become the person that I am today so that I could help girls or women really heal their little girl inside of themselves so that they can live free and happy and joyful and abundant and confident in their bodies and in their minds and connected to spirit. I didn't know what all of that meant at that time when I said I want to save little girls from themselves, but that's sort of how it's evolved. And so after that, I went through high school and I went to college and I studied psychology. And then I got my master's in social work and I went to NYU and I loved it. It was great. And everything just sort of evolved from there. From my first jobs, I worked at an inpatient dual diagnosis unit. So it was like for people with co-occurring disorders, usually mostly mental health and addiction. And I've worked at outpatient mental health clinics. I've worked at rehabs. And then by the time I was 26 years old, I started my private practice. And actually my first client was a 16-year-old girl who had just had this big transition. Her family moved from Chicago to near where I live and where my private practice is in Greenwich, Connecticut. And she was going through this whole struggle and the girls were being mean to her. And it was like this total evolutionary thing where I felt like all of my life I worked so that I could like help someone like her. And she was like suicidal because she wanted to go back home and she didn't have any friends, like all this stuff. And we worked together and now she's doing amazingly well and she's in college now and it's crazy. And so I was able to start doing that by the time I was 26. And as that sort of evolved, it's sort of, and this whole online coaching thing has happened. And then my own spiritual journey and finding spirituality and bringing it into my life and has really sort of evolved into this place where I can help people, and specifically women, all around the world to be able to embrace the life that they dream of, that they know is possible for them, but they don't know how to get from where they are right now to where they want to be. And that's what I help them do.
Wow, that's an amazing story. And it's, I think that's so cool that even though you didn't maybe know the details, that at age 13 you already knew the outcome that you wanted in 10 years time.
I know. It's so funny because I work a lot with young adults, and sometimes they're in their 20s or early 30s. They're like, I don't know what I want to do with my life. And it's not like I feel terrible, but I'm like, I think that there's this thing that we all have, like this idea within us of like an outcome that we want to see. Like I said, I want to save little girls from themselves. At one point I thought that meant I wanted to work with adolescents and children. And I thought that's what it was. But then I did work with some adolescents and children. And I realized that what was good for me was really working with adults, because with adults, they can sort of, for me anyway, they can sort of make their own choices and do things differently, usually like 16 and up. And so, but then when I started working with adults, what I realized is that, especially with women, men too, but we all have these like little children versions of ourselves that are inside of us that are just, crying and screaming, like, begging us to take care of them and to set them free. Right. How many times do you get into these situations in life where you realize where your little girl or little boy gets triggered and you feel unloved, or like somebody's making fun of you, or like, and it all comes back from our childhood. And so I think that where I was going with all of this was that, I think a lot of people may or may not know exactly what they want to do with their life, but they know that the outcome that they want to create. And if you stay in alignment with that, you will be guided and led to the teachers and the schooling and the certifications and the people who can guide you on that path.
Yeah. And I suppose, if you look closely enough, there's a theme running through, the different choices you make, even if they're maybe completely different jobs as the years go by. I mean, because I think it is quite rare that people, settle pretty much on what they want at such a young age like you did. But for me personally, I always wanted to be like a famous musician from quite a young age. And I took it really seriously, like throughout my 20s. And it caused me like a lot of grief because I really got emotionally attached to it and kind of had my self-worth attached to whether or not I was successful in that. But I suppose now you said that, looking at the bigger picture, it was always about wanting to inspire people.
Mm-hmm.
So seeing it now, like I'm still wanting, because I'm setting up my own coaching business now, so it's still, wanting to help and inspire people, but it's a completely different way. But yeah, looking at it now, there's that same pattern of wanting to help others, running through both choices that I had, really.
Right, right. And I think like that's sort of the idea, is that there's this theme. And I think that all of us sort of have this, we have this mission in our life, and it's unique to us, but it's also the same to everyone, where it's like, how do we show up with more love in the world? How do we express our own unique gifts and version that help to perpetuate people's evolution moving forward, right? And I think that some people it's music, some people it's podcasting, some people it's coaching, some people it's inventing and creating something. I don't know if like Steve Jobs, when he was like making the computer, if he could have like ever seen people like having, like, everybody has an iPhone and whatever, like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think but the mission is the same, is how do we share our unique gifts that we have, and in order to help propel and move people forward in life. And we only do that by showing up with love and showing up with grace. And for me too, like I said, I initially thought that um, I initially thought that my dream was really working with children. And I think that was also partially because when I had this vision, I was 13. And so how could I even envision like working with adults, right? Because I was nowhere near adulthood. And like the only people I thought it could help were people like my age or younger. But but as I've grown and as that's evolved, and I also thought too that I would one day far in the distance have a private practice, and then I got to that dream when I was like 26 years old, and I was like, oh my God, now what? And so, and then this whole online coaching thing happened. It's like, oh wow, I don't have to just see people like in my office. Like I can see people all over the world. And so that becomes this whole other dream. And I think it's just like allowing yourself to have those like expansions and contractions in life so that you can move forward. I think it was like Eric Fromm who said like the greatest thing a man can do is give birth to himself. And I think that like in life, we always have these constant like expansions and contractions going so that we can really propel ourselves into this place of sharing and giving our own unique gifts that are aligned with love. And then thereby when we do that, like the whole world benefits from that, whatever that might be.
Yeah, absolutely. And is that a something you have to help your clients with? Is that a kind of quite a typical thing that comes up when, how do I figure out what I want to do with my life?
Actually, yes, it is. And it ranges from, I know I mentioned before, like in people in their early 20s or 30s, talking about what they want to do with their life. But as I'm thinking about it right now, I have clients, women in their 40s, of like, they've sort of did the thing that they thought that they should do, whether in the corporate world, and because it kept them safe, it kept them, they had a steady paycheck, and that was sort of like what their parents did, and it's what my parents did too. And like they did the right thing, they went to school, they got this job, but like they never really felt aligned with it, and they just did it, and sort of they fell into the first job they got out of college, and then their career evolved from there, versus like figuring out who am I, what are my gifts, and then going from there. And then now they're at this place in their life where they're like, wow, like I wake up every day and I hate going to work and I hate what I do. Because I also, tend to attract people as my clients, of people who are awakening to spirituality and spiritual content, and which I love doing and I love talking about, and I love using spirituality as a lens to see life. And because it's helped me so much, and it's helped my clients evolve so much over a very short period of time. And, they're coming to a space where it's like everything that I thought I knew, like I don't know about myself and I don't know anymore. And so what often we work on is like getting back into yourself, which is oftentimes all about peeling the layers of the onion back to what it is you thought you were, to who it is you've always been. And when you start to do that, you start to see more and more what are your unique gifts, who are you, and how can you combine those to really show up differently in the world. And what I also try to do with a lot of my clients, and this is something that I've also struggled with as somebody who, I'm using air quotes, you can't see them, but when I went to school for social work, people be like, you're going to be poor, right? Like, they have this vision of me going into people's homes and taking away their children, which is which is like maybe 1% of like what's possible in the social work career. But like, oh, like we need people like you, people like you that are going to be okay, like earning a menial salary but doing really good in the world. And I think that there's this belief system, that there's this limiting belief system that a lot of us have grown up with, that like if you do what you love, or you do what you're passionate about, or you do what feels good to help people or whatever, that you have to live a menial, near poverty kind of lifestyle. And so what I also work with my clients is, when you step into your power and you believe that you can earn abundantly for doing something that you love to do and you're good at and you enjoy and you're passionate about, that you can earn abundantly for it. And that's amazing. And that's such a gift. And the more that you're taking care of yourself, the more you can take care of your gift, and the more you can share with the world.
Yeah, absolutely. That's wonderful. I suppose there's a lot of, I suppose, kind of fear around, especially like if you've had a good corporate job, kind of taking that leap. I mean, you can do little steps, you don't have to take huge jump, but I think there's definitely a fear people have of stepping into the unknown. But I think having that trust in the universe, or building that trust, is can create huge new opportunities and open new doors for you. But if you live in that place of fear and believe that things won't work out for you, and that, well, there's nothing out there for me, it does make things a lot more difficult for you, and become really a self-fulfilling prophecy, I suppose.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was sort of, how I sort of branched out into what I'm doing now, which is, I was working at a day job at a clinic, a mental health clinic. And so I was working there like 8:30 to 5. And then I would have my private practice from 5:30 to 9:30 at night. And then I would do it all over again, Monday through Friday. And so, I'm totally a big believer. It's like sometimes you just have to quit the job and go, but there are a lot of steps that you can take along the way, so that when you quit the job and go, it's not like, you don't have to worry about paying rent or something like that, or your mortgage or your car payment. You know what I mean? Like some people do that, and they can totally catch themselves, but that's not my personal style. I would personally freak out way too much if I had to do that. And so for me, what I did was, I remember and where I used to work, like with traffic, it could be over an hour to get there in the morning. So I'd leave my house like 7:30, and I wouldn't get home till like 10 o'clock at night, and I would do it all every day. And by the way, I'm so sorry I keep doing that.
That's fine.
And
take a drink if you want.
Yeah. So I was doing that for a long time. And then, but what happened was I ended up building my private practice up enough to the point where I was able to leave. And when I left, I was earning about more than double at my private practice, working about 10 hours a week than I was making in my 40-hour a week job. And so like when I was able to have I sustained that amount for about 6 to 8 months and then all of a sudden it was so funny because around that time I would wake up in the morning and I was cranky and I was hangry because I wasn't eating regularly because I was working so much and I wasn't taking care of myself, which I don't necessarily recommend everybody doing that. But for me, it was what I needed to do, or what I believed I needed to do at the time. So I did it. And, and so I was like, when am I going to leave my job? When am I going to leave my job? Like, I'm working like crazy. Like, this isn't fair, and then all of a sudden what happened is I was like, and I realized how resentful I would get to work. I would just have this like sort of attitude, and like, and then all of a sudden I was speaking with my mentor once, and she's like, you know what, you just need to be in the energy that you want to be when you leave, and how do you want to feel? What is it that you're looking for? What is the feeling that you want to feel when you leave your day job? And I was like, joy, freedom, like abundance. And so what happened is I just started going to work with that attitude and with that mindset and being like, this is temporary. This is a short period of time. Like, everything is working out for me. I believe that I'm going to be successful. There is no failure here. I'm doing very well. And, and clients would come to me, and then all of a sudden, it just hit me in this moment, and I was just suddenly like just ready to leave.
Yeah.
And like, and people would be like, how do you know when it's time to go? And I sort of equate it like with when I married my husband, or when my husband and I met, and I was like, I just knew it was him. I knew he was the one. Like, yeah. And people say like, you're not going to know until you know. And I totally believe that to be true. And I felt the same way almost when I left my job, meaning that like, all of a sudden I came home one day and I was like, I'm done. Yeah. And I've done everything that I could do there, and I'm ready to resign. And it was amazing. So, and as soon as I left my job, like, all of a sudden I got all of these, like, I was only probably working, like I said, I was probably working 10 or 12 hours a week, earning about double what I was making at my day job. And within a couple weeks, I was totally full, because it was like the universe knew that I couldn't take on any more clients, so it couldn't give them to me. And so, but then it's when I suddenly had more time, I had all these people calling me out of the blue. It wasn't like I was marketing more or anything like that. I wasn't. I literally just left. And so all of a sudden the universe was like, oh, like, you have more time. Like, here's more clients, here's more abundance. And it worked out in this really beautiful way for me. I was very grateful for it. But I think it's all about, continuing, even when you're not in the place where you want to be, just showing up with love and grace and with the belief that everything is working out perfectly.
Yeah, that's so important. I think that's like the biggest thing, because people get stuck in these unfulfilling realities and they just keep recreating them, and you have to change something. Like, I had a friend ask me not long ago, because they're fed up in their job and they're miserable all the time, and I said, well, you need to, if you keep broadcasting that energy and that signal, that's all you're going to get back. And they said, what do you mean I can be happy in my job even though I don't like it? And I was like, well, yeah, and if you stay in that place, eventually you will be let out of it. You won't just be happy and get stuck there forever. But until you change that energy, you will stay stuck there for a long time.
Exactly. And what I would do is I would start, like, I would compliment my coworkers more. I would bring cookies for the receptionist there. Like, I just try to make it a more lovely environment for myself. And it made it more fun for me to be there. And so then by the time that even though like I was very resentful for probably like a year before I actually left. But the last 6 months, I was very grateful to be there. And when I left, I was very sad. And even though like I knew that it was the right thing for me to do, I was it made me sad to go versus like, F you guys, like, I don't want to be here anymore. You know what I mean? Like, I'm done. Like, you don't want to, if you want to like go and do what you want to do, you don't want to leave with that kind of energy, because whatever energy you leave with is the energy you're going to carry into your next position, whatever it is, even if it's working for yourself. And so, I really wanted it to be something that I share, a time in my life that I cherished and that I valued. And I did.
Yeah.
And I think it's important for all of us to be able to do that. And, one of my favorite, I'm going to mess up the quote, but I always mess up quotes and statistics, but I always I get the point across, which is, I don't know if you listen to, or if your listeners listen to Abraham Hicks, but one of the things that they talk about is we're always so focused about getting there, getting to that place where we want to be, getting to that place where we're happier, where we're with our soulmate, when we're living with money, when we're, in that big house. We always want to get to there. We want to get to there. And we're so focused on the here and now about getting to there. And what we're projecting out into the universe is this sense of lack or unworthiness of like, well, I don't have it now, so what I have now isn't good enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so, but if we really understand that I would like to get there, but where I am feels really good too. And when I am in that other place where I'm going to feel like how I'm going to act, how I'm going to behave, and I think and feel that way right now, the there will then come to us.
Mm.
Versus if we're feeling like, oh, like I'm so mad, like I can't believe she made that much money, or she got married, or or if we're so focused on like what other people are doing or what we think we should have when we don't have it or whatever, we create this sense of lack. And when we are in fear and sadness, and when we're in that place, we can attract into our life the experiences, the joyful, exciting, and beautiful experiences that we deserve and desire into our life. So we can't get to there from here. We have to bring the feelings and the thoughts and the actions of there to here. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that's the secret to life, really, I think.
Yeah.
And it's amazing though, but if somehow you do manage to push so hard that you achieve that thing that you strive for so long, I've seen that when you get it, I mean, you might be happy for just a few weeks or a month, but eventually that feeling of lack will come back again anyway.
Right. Well, here's the thing. It's like, and I'm just making up something else, but like, we're making up another circumstance, but like, like, let's say like, yeah, it's like you get that $1 million that you've been like eyeing and dreaming about and manifesting and getting excited about. Like, and then once you get there, like, you're not like, you're going to want to continue to evolve. Like, we're humans, we're meant to grow, we're meant to evolve, we're meant to change. And so like, it's natural to continue to want more things in your life. Like it's part of like who we are, like who we are as humans. Mm-hmm. Right. And so like, know that your dreams are always going to evolve. Your goals are always going to evolve. They're always going to be more. But the reality is like, if we don't enjoy what we have right now, then all of that stuff won't come to us or won't happen as easily or as quickly as it could. And realizing that it's not about obtaining the goal, it's about how have you been going about your journey, right? Mm-hmm. And knowing that when you get to that goal, like life isn't going to just all of a sudden stop and everything's going to be perfect and happy. Mm-hmm. That's never going to happen. Your life is perfect and happy right now because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And so how can you use where you are right now to get to where you want to be?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. That's awesome. So what does the term self-love mean to you?
Self-love mean to me. Self-love means to me is really making yourself the priority in your life and your energy the priority in your life. And I know that I don't know if a lot of your listeners are parents, which can sometimes make making yourself a priority very, very difficult. But when you make your own energy a priority, and what I mean about your energy, I mean about like the actual energy you have to go about the day. I mean the energy of your mood, the energy of your feelings, the energy of your behaviors. When we don't pay attention to that, we become tired, we become lethargic, we become depressed, we become anxious, because what's happening is we're not paying attention to our natural internal sense of self and direction and intuitive guidance that we have. And so when I think of self love, what I think of is really doing the things that you need to do every single day to make sure that your energy is in alignment with what it is that you want to create. And so, like I said, if you want that $1 million or whatever it could possibly be, or you want that car, you want that, I work with a lot of women. So you want that man, you want that baby, you want all of those things. You want the white picket fence and 2.5 kids and a dog and whatever. You have to be in the energy that you think that that experience is going to create for you. Right. So how do you get into that joy? How do you get into that excitement? How do you get into that sense of freedom and well-being now? And what is it that you need to do to take care of yourself in that way now? Maybe it's taking a bubble bath. Maybe it's meditating. Maybe it's calling a friend or writing in your journal. Maybe it's listening to a podcast. What is it that you need to do every single day? And it can be different things, for different people, and it could be different things on different days. How are you eating? How are you sleeping? What is it that you can say no to and allow yourself the gift of not feeling bad about it because you need to take care of yourself. And so when I think of self-love, I think of really taking care of your energy, and the more that you do that, the more you will love you, because you are taking care of you, and the greater gift that you are going to be to your family and your friends and your colleagues because you are taking care of you. And it's really about also like self acceptance, and that everything has happened in the way that it's supposed to, and we're not a victim to our experience. These things have happened to us so that we can evolve into the person that we're meant to be. Like I said in the very beginning, as I was talking about my journey, having an eating disorder and being depressed at 13 led me to this really beautiful, crazy journey of being to help people all over the world. And I'm so grateful for that. But that never would have happened if I didn't go through this very dark time. And so it's also realizing that those dark moments of our lives are oftentimes our greatest gifts.
Yeah, love it. I think when you understand that, it kind of opens up a whole new way of thinking for you, because we all have those big struggles in time, and maybe when you're trying to start a new career, or you've had a bad relationship and things are very challenging, when you do those things that you just said, and you have a choice at every moment to love yourself. You don't have to be, because I lost my job, that I automatically have to be miserable. It's obviously it is challenging, but you still have a choice.
Yeah, well, I think that's so key, because I think that that's oftentimes what a lot of people forget, is that we have choices in how we feel. We have choices in how we think. Well, oftentimes it feels like well, here, let me explain this again, because if you draw out a little circle, at the top of the circle I would put thoughts, and then there would be, the next one would be feelings, and then the next one would be behaviors. And we always have this cycle that's going on. We have a thought, we think, we have a thought of there. Well, actually there's like 4. So there's like the event that happens, right? That creates a thought, that creates a feeling, that creates a behavior, right? That creates another event, that creates another thought, that creates another feeling, that creates behavior. We can't control the events all the time that are happening in our lives. We can do the very best that we can. And the more that we take care of our energy and take care of ourselves, the more that we have this sort of spiritual mindset, the greater our circumstances will be. But we'll still get into car accidents. We'll still trip and break our foot. We'll still, forget somebody's birthday. We'll still be humans, right? These things will still happen. We'll still have a fight with our husband. These things will still happen to us. And, somebody will die, somebody will get sick. These things will happen. And so how do we start to slow down the process where this event creates a thought, right? The thing is sometimes we can choose our thoughts, but oftentimes what happens is the thought gets stimulated right away, but we can choose whether or not we believe thought to be true. And I think that that's where we really start shifting how things start showing up for us. Like when there's an event that gets triggered, like you just mentioned, like losing your job, right? And you feel terrible about yourself. Like, and your boss says you're worthless and you're a piece of garbage, right? You can choose whether or not you believe that to be true.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And you can look at your performance on the job and say, like, that's crazy. Or, you know what, like, I didn't show up as my best self because I didn't want to be there. And like, right. And so,
yeah.
And you get to choose what you believe to be true. And then as you start to choose that, your feelings about the situation start to change. And as your feelings about the event start to change, then your behaviors towards the event or towards future events start to change. And then the next event will happen. And then you'll have another thought. And then you can choose whether or not you believe it to be true. And then you can choose how you feel about it. And then you can choose how you behave about it. Oftentimes what happens is that cycle happens so quickly, we don't even realize that it's happening. But that's why the things that I love about meditation is that it helps to slow down that process. And it helps you to clean your mind so that when those events happen, that it slows it down so that you can make the choices that you need to be in alignment with the life that you want to create. And realizing that, like, if you mess up and like if you kind of go down that negative rabbit hole, like, you can still get out. Right? You can forgive yourself and get out. And you can always forgive yourself and choose another thought. And you can forgive yourself and choose a higher vibrational thought. You can't go from like, I feel like absolute garbage, I can't believe my boss fired me, to like, I'm the best person on the planet. You know what I mean? It's hard to go from like there to there, but you can start moving slowly up the emotional scale. Like, well, maybe I'm not such a piece of garbage, like, maybe there were things that I could have done differently, or maybe this is the universe's way of telling me that I wasn't meant to be there. Maybe something better is happening, is around the corner for me, right? So you can start to choose better and better thoughts that you can start believing to be true about you or about the circumstance, and then those will help align your feelings and your future behaviors with it, so that you can sort of get out of that dark spiral. Does that make sense? Because I think like you hit on like a really big thing, which is like realizing that like, yeah, we have a choice in how we feel.
Yeah, definitely. And definitely, yeah. I mean, with the reactionary thoughts, as you said, and it's and bringing in the meditation as well. I mean, it's like it's almost like a rewiring of the brain, really.
Exactly. Yeah.
And definitely. Sorry, yes, go on.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say we have these neural pathways that get formed in our brains. Like, when this happens, this is how I respond. And, and we're, when you get down to it, we're our bodies, our minds, our spirits are like, the initial thing is always about safety. Right. And it's emotional. There's physical safety and emotional safety. And, everybody responds to those things a little bit differently. But the idea is our bodies, our hearts, our minds, our souls, our spirits, like, they want to keep us safe. But at the same time, we can't isolate ourselves emotionally or spiritually or physically from the world, right? Because in doing that, right? But it can be, but if you had a mean teacher, right, and they told you that you were a piece of garbage, and then all of a sudden you get, older, and then you have a boss who's telling you you're a piece of garbage, like, you're going to start believing you're a piece of garbage, right? But the reality is that these things are happening for you to open yourself up to believe that you're not a piece of garbage, right? And so it's about allowing yourself that experience to build a new neural pathway that you're not, I can't believe this is the one I'm using, but like, that you're not a piece of garbage, right? You have to start building up the circle around it, right? The event, the thoughts, the feelings, behaviors around not being a piece of garbage. And it takes time to build that new neural pathway if that's what you've been feeling internally and that's what you've been told externally.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more.
What?
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the other things that I've found to be very powerful in my life, and you touched on kind of the spiritual aspects. I think, and I suppose spiritual mindset and believing that that you live in a friendly universe. And I mean, it takes conditioning to really ingrain that in your mind, but when you do that, you can kind of look at even really extreme adversity and challenge, and if you look at it in the perspective of, oh, this is, providing an opportunity for me to become more than I am today, it gives you a huge amount of power to overcome things that you otherwise would completely just crumble or fall victim to, really.
Totally. Yeah. I'm going to steal this from my husband. He's also a psychotherapist and life coach and spiritual teacher. But what if he's, do you essentially believe that life is working out for you or not? Like, internally, do you believe that life is working out for you? And so if you have that belief system that life is working out for you and that this is a friendly universe, then you are going to be much, much further ahead in your life than the other way, just sort of as we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's one of my favorites. So powerful. But
it's so powerful.
Yeah. I mean, so I mean, the majority of everything that you're talking about today, is that kind of what you were taught through the psychotherapy training, or is it stuff you've just kind of mostly come up with just through your own journey, and then that's the foundation? Or how does it look?
No, not at all. I don't want to say not at all. Some of it, yes. My psychotherapy training, I think, is something that makes me that makes my coaching very unique with my clients. But in therapy in general, it can oftentimes feel very focused on the past, and all of that. I do believe is very, very important. But I think sort of where psychotherapy leaves off is sort of these elements of the universe and how to live in life. It's like you can take these experiences that you have, and sometimes going over these experiences again and again and again can oftentimes make people feel like victims to their experiences versus feeling empowered by them. And so, like, I actually have a client who has been, she is one of my psychotherapy clients, and she's been working with her probably about 3 years, and she's had a therapist for the last 25 years. And she's come further in the last 3 years because I started giving her spiritual content than she has over the last 25.
Wow.
When I first started working with her, she was very, very, very much a victim to her experience. And that was a lot of what we talked about. Is like, if you want to get from A to B, you can't be a victim. Mm-hmm. And you can't, yes, like, these terrible things happen to you. And yes, your parents weren't the parents that you wish you had, like probably about 90% of the population, right? Right? Maybe, yeah. I don't know if this is just the people I see anyway. Yeah. So I probably have a skewed version of that, but like, we all wish that our parents had done something differently, right? Most of us. And so, yes, like, when it comes to these circumstances, if you keep playing them out over and over and over and over again, for 20 years, like, I've seen people, not really get very far, but yet when I bring in the spiritual concepts of the universe and what I believe to be true and what I've studied with, when I've studied with, Harvey Bernstein and among other teachers, and Marianne Williamson, when I bring these concepts into my practice, people skyrocket in ways that they didn't even know was possible for them. And they get much more in touch with who they are and realize in the ways that they have been creating this sense of victimhood around themselves. And so, what I teach a lot in my coaching is like how, I want to understand all about you and how you got to be who you are. And I think that I do that through a very different lens than maybe some other coaches because of my psychotherapeutic background. And I've studied with world-renowned psychiatrists as well, who are just incredible. And, and so I have this unique lens of being able to see, okay, this is what happened to you. Here are the circumstances. Here's what's happened. And I have these spiritual tools, right? And so how do we combine all of them together so that you don't have to feel like a victim to your experience anymore, and you can truly live the life that you were meant to live, which is in alignment with love and compassion, and have a sense of freedom to be the person that you know that you can be. And you can have that relationship, and you can make that money, and you can feel that sense of joy. It's so interesting that one of the clients that I'm referring to, she actually just got a what she considered was a bad review from her boss, and she handled it with such grace. Instead of feeling a victim to it, she saw her participation in it, and also didn't let it ruin her life the way she would have done 3 years ago when we first met. And so, all of that, and what she and I have been talking about is her own awakening to utilizing spiritual concepts, and her own desire to not be the victim to her experience anymore, and that she is the creator of her reality and she can create whatever she desires. And when we understand that we are we're the co-creators of our experience with the universe, then we have this capacity to really do anything. And when I say anything, I almost don't mean anything, because you're supposed to do only what you're supposed to do. You know what I mean? Which I think, like my parents were like, you can be whatever you want to be. And like, I know they meant that with the best of intentions, but I was never going to be like a mathematician or something like that. Like, I hated math, but you can only be who you are and who you are in alignment with becoming. And so whatever that is, you can be anything within that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you can't just like, the one that always comes to my mind, I'm not American, when people say you can be whatever you want to be, I always imagine someone saying, I want to be the president. And it's just like, well, it's probably not going to happen.
Yeah, that's not going to happen, at least here, but maybe somewhere else. I don't know. But yeah, like, I mean, I believe you can be whatever you want to be, but you can only be you. Right. And so when you and then when you realize that whatever you want to be is the most use of you, of who you are, what your gifts are, like that's what that means to me,
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. So would you say then that doing that psychotherapy, the training, has kind of, even though it's not, everything that you wanted it to be, it gave you kind of a foundation and a grounding? Because that's one of the things, I mean, people, I think you can get kind of too drawn into the spiritual side of things and then not be able to apply it to the real world if you just get too lost in it. And that's one of the things that I really like about neuroscience and quantum physics, which I've never really been interested in it that much in the past, but the last, especially the last few months, I've been like, it kind of creates like a tangible explanation for these, amazing spiritual phenomenon that occur. So
yeah, I mean, absolutely. When I went, I'm somebody who went straight through school. That's why I was able to open up my private practice at 26. So I went from college to graduate school to my first job, which gave me the hours to be able to open up my business. And so when I was doing that, I was always curious about spirituality, I guess, but I didn't really know it, if that makes any sense. Like I liked reading my horoscope, and I definitely knew I was a Libra because of like all of the attributes that Libras have, and I'm a Libra.
Me
And like,
too.
and I like was curious about psychics, but never actually went to one. And
Yeah.
I, and then actually my husband, Josh, my husband, when we met, and I knew that I felt better when I meditated, but I didn't really understand why. And I knew it was
Mm.
good, but still didn't understand why. And I had some experiences in my life at that time. My father was very, so it was about, well, it started in 2009, but when I met my husband around 2011, 12, sorry.
Mhm.
um my father had been really, really sick, and there were several nights and emergency surgeries when we didn't know whether or not he was going to die. And things just like kind of kept happening. He's alive now, and he's doing okay. But there were several years, and within those years, periods of months where that he was in the hospital for long periods of time. And I remember there was this one night where something had happened, and there was this, he was either he had to have this emergency surgery where he was going to either die that night, or they were going to, or try to save him with this crazy surgery that no one had ever done, but like they had to try
Mhm.
because he was going to die. And so what happened was, so they rushed him into the hospital and all this crazy stuff and was happening. And I remember like laying on the waiting room floor. So the surgery floor, the surgery room was like down in sort of like the hospital basement, and like we're in this waiting room, and I just like laid on the floor to like even be like inches closer to my dad, physically, which might sound crazy, but you're desperate in those times. And I was laying down on the floor, and I was just like, God, like, I don't know, like what to say. Like, I've heard about you. I felt you this one time in my life before when I went to Israel and I went to the wall, and that was really cool. But like, I need help. Like, I'm lost. And like, I had this overwhelming sense of like, he's going to be okay, come
Mm.
over me. And it was just this knowing like he's okay, he's doing okay, and it's going to be okay. And I was like, wow, like that's so weird. That's so not anything that I do.
Yeah.
And I didn't even really talk about that. Haven't really even talked about it, that moment that much in my life. But I had this experience, and I was just like um, so desperate for that connection at that moment. And he miraculously pulled through that surgery. And it took a long time for him to be okay, and lots of surgeries later for him to be okay.
Mm.
But ultimately he is alive and he's okay. And then when I met my husband, a year or so after that, 2 years, I can't remember right now, but I met my husband. He he was somebody who had been meditating twice a day for 15 years or something at that time. He was very into spirituality and doing yoga every day since he was like 14 years old. And I liked yoga, and I was really open to what the spiritual world was like. And he started sharing with me these teachers and these experiences, and we went to these workshops and we did yoga together, and he opened me up to this world that I never really knew existed. I guess was interested in it, and I was definitely a very willing participant. But like, it was like, oh, and here are all of these self-help books you can read, and here's like all about the universe, and did you know that this could happen? I was like, oh my God, no, like that's amazing. And so it was just so crazy how all of that, and then how I started awakening, how I started bringing these experiences and my new intuitive knowledge and my new intuitive like trusting of myself into my life. And as I did that, I brought that into the lives of my clients, and they'd be like, really? Wow. And then all of a sudden their lives would start to change so miraculously too. And so, oftentimes I agree with you. I think that if you get too spiritual, it can be like a little too crazy out there. Right. But like I have found that combining it sort of with the grounding of psychotherapy and understanding like how family dynamics work and how they make you who they are and how things are or how you grow up and all of that stuff, combining it really helps people understand themselves better, and it helps them become the person that they've always known that they could be or are meant to be.
Yeah, that's
So
cool. Yeah, definitely agree with all that. It's great story as well. Thank you for sharing that.
yeah.
Cool. So what kind of like coaching services do you offer then? Do you do like packages, or do you just do session by session when you're working with new clients?
Yes. So I offer coaching packages on my website. You can find me at www.ashleywatson.com. So I have a 6-month coaching package right now. I'm super excited about it. It's really amazing. I've seen people like within 3 months of this coaching package. I've seen people, one of my clients, she was living at home with her parents. She had like a job that was basically paying her minimum wage, even though she was like a lawyer and like very well educated. And she was in this really terrible, terrible relationship. And within 3 months, she doubled her salary,
Wow.
moved out of her parents' home, and broke up with a terrible boyfriend. And so, which is amazing, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just like change your life in 3 months is pretty incredible in that way. And so, so I have like this 6-month coaching program because, I really you really start to see the changes over the 3 to 4 months of your life. And in this coaching program, it's really amazing. We have a 3-hour intensive session. We have a VIP day. I see you almost weekly. We have a co-journaling where we can journal online. It's really amazing together. It's awesome. And I'm like just basically like your spiritual BFF psychotherapist person for 6 months to really help you get into alignment, get clear on where you want to be, get clear on what's blocking you, release those blocks, negativities, limiting beliefs, so that you can fully step into the person that you are meant to be, and have the tools that you need to be able to evolve and move forward.
Awesome. Sounds great.
Yeah.
And I'll put the link to your website in the show notes as well, so people, anyone who's interested, can check that out as well.
Awesome.
So it's been absolutely great to have you on the show today, and it's been a great conversation, and thank you for coming on and sharing your story and everything you've learned along the way.
Oh, thank you, Chris. It's been really awesome. I'm so grateful for this opportunity and to, reach out to your listeners and share my story. And if there's anything that I can do to support you or them along the way, please just let me know.
Awesome. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So that is all for today, guys. I hope you've really enjoyed this conversation and gotten some really great takeaways from this. And I'll put the link to Ashley's website in the show notes so you can check that out as well. So thank you all so much for listening, and I'll catch you all next time. Take care. Bye-bye.